Hey there, it's David. On this island, you're invited to be real with yourself, your God, and others. You'll surrender your secrets and take off your masks. That's no small thing, and it definitely isn't easy. For if it were easy, everyone would already be doing it. So, I want to take some time and break this whole being real, surrendering your secrets, and taking off your masks thing down to its basics. I want to get down into the nitty-gritty of what's required to be real, the nitty-gritty of examining why your secrets and masks are preventing you from being who God has created you to be. I also want to point some things out that just might make it a little easier for you to actually be real. Easier for you to actually surrender your secrets and take off your masks. I'm sure you've heard the old adage, you can't eat an elephant in one bite. Well, basically, you're going to spend the rest of your time on this island eating the elephant of being real, surrendering your secrets and taking off your masks. And you're going to do it one bite at a time. Let's go island hopping. The first rule of being real, as a follower of Jesus, you can no longer apply the labels of secular, which means of the world, and sacred, which means of God, to your life. Because you've made the choice to commit your life to the care and control of Jesus, everything in your life is now sacred. There's no separation because, as a follower of Jesus, everything in your life is of God. And you are a follower of Jesus, sacred, of God, regardless of where you are, what you're doing, or with whom you're doing it. Thus, everything from your work, to your family, to your friendships, to your hobbies, and yes, even your secrets and masks are now of God. For you, there's nothing in your life that's secular or of the world. For you, everything in your life is sacred because it's of God. Because you're a follower of Jesus, you're no longer just a guy or a girl, rich or poor, gay or straight, white or black, old or young. You're now a child of God. You're sacred. This is your identity. This is who you are. You aren't your secrets. And you aren't any of the labels that this world so quickly assigns to everyone. Yes, you have likes and dislikes, lifestyle choices, along with physical, emotional, and intellectual challenges that cause you to struggle in this life. All of us do. But none of these likes and dislikes, lifestyle choices, physical, emotional, and intellectual challenges come close to defining who you are. You are, first and foremost, a child of God. You're sacred. And it's this identity that informs and influences everything in your life. Being a follower of Jesus is now the only filter through which every aspect of your life flows. Take a moment to soak that all in. As you embrace the reality of being a child of God, of being sacred, your challenge will be to come to terms with the world's response to this reality. The world doesn't want you to truly be real. The world wants you to keep your secrets and your masks. The world wants you to pretend to be real so that you can fit in, so that you don't rock the boat, so that the status quo can be preserved. For what the world desires above all else is stasis, a reality that remains constant in a state of equilibrium. The world wants you to continue to pretend to be who you think you have to be, in order to be accepted, in order to fit in. The world has no desire for you, or anyone else for that matter, to be who God has truly created you to be. The blessed, divinely inspired, created in the image of God wonder that is you. For being who God has created you to be will, quite literally, change the world. And the world doesn't want to change. Yet the world has to deal with the fact that all humans have been created in the image of God, which means that every single person wrestles with what it means to be real. Every single person wrestles with surrendering their secrets and taking off their masks. All of this wrestling is precisely why the world has to work so hard to convince you to be who the world wants you to be. No squirrel worries about being real. No squirrel worries about surrendering their secrets and taking off their masks. And that's not a knock on squirrels. They just aren't created in the image of God. Well, the world loves squirrels, for squirrels simply live. Talk about stasis. You cut down a squirrel's tree, and a squirrel will simply find another tree and get back to being a squirrel, living just as they always did, simply in a different tree. But us human beings are different. Since we're created in the image of God, if someone cuts down our trees, we will question why. We will seek a way to preserve our trees. We will make the effort to plant more of our trees, and we will work to find a tree alternative so that we aren't so dependent on our trees. One aspect of your creation in the image of God is that you have a will. Your will is the summary of your unique perspectives on life and living. It's the core beliefs and principles that give meaning to your life. You've most likely prayed for God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven, which praying those words is actually a matter of your very own will. You're making the choice to submit your will to the will of God. Being created in the image of God means that you have the possibility of understanding your will, the possibility of understanding your unique perspectives on life and living, understanding your core beliefs and principles that give meaning to your life. In fact, spoiler alert, transformation is a matter of will, God's will becoming your will. But more about that later. Because we've been blessed with a will, we attempt to control our environments, as opposed to being controlled by our environments. In fact, when you attempt to control something or someone, it's actually called imposing your will. We're this way because we've been created in the image of the very one who created our environments. And this uniquely human characteristic of imposing our will flies in direct opposition to the stasis that the world desires for everything. The stasis of adaptation to what is, as opposed to the mobility of our true identities as sacred children of God, focusing our wills on what can be. Thus, the world must derive some response to our created in the image of Godness. And since the world can't make us all be like squirrels, the world must encourage all of us to force each other to act like squirrels. The world encourages us to create stasis through cultural norms, expectations, and definitions of what is acceptable and what isn't. The world creates scenarios that force us into feeling that we have to keep our secrets and wear our masks. Yet the world must also provide an out for all of us who desire to be real, desire to surrender our secrets and take off our masks, a way for us to believe that we're being real, surrendering our secrets and taking off our masks, even when we aren't. The world must do this in order to maintain the stasis that it so strongly desires. Thus, the world creates labels. And the world encourages all of us to use these labels as our identity, as well as to define the identity of others. Labels are the world's answer to your desire to surrender your secrets and take off your masks. The stasis that's desired by the world for your life in this world leaves no room for you or anyone else for that matter to be real. Well, being real in the sense of you living into your sacred child of God identity. For labels will only enable you to be real up to a certain point. Let me explain. The world invites you to be somewhat real. Real enough that it fools many of us. For the world's real labels are simply a one-size-fits-all identity. For the stasis that's desired by the world requires the maintaining of control over you, over me, over everyone. Thus, every human being must make a choice. Either I'll serve the stasis of the world, or I'll serve the mobility found in my identity as a sacred child of God. My identity as someone created in the image of God. There's no third option. And if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. So when you do have a moment of clarity and you're real, surrendering your secrets and taking off your masks, the world's only response is to give you a label, to define you in some way, shape, or form that will give you the illusion of being real without actually being real. And we're so very quick to accept and to use these labels to identify ourselves and others. We're so good at accepting and using these labels for ourselves and others that we actually believe that they represent our true and total identities. What I'm inviting you to learn while living on this island is that the world's labels can never and will never define your true and total identity. For you are so much more than your labels. You might be asking yourself, what's a label? Well, a label is an identity that the world has given to you, like addict or rich or poor or so on. For us created in the image of God humans, labels embody the perception that we're surrendering our secrets and taking off our masks, even when, in truth, all we're really doing is maintaining the stasis that the world desires. The Oxford Dictionary defines label as a classifying phrase or name applied to a person, especially one that is inaccurate or restrictive. Now, don't misunderstand. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging a label that might help you define an aspect of your life at any given point in time. I have to admit that labels do simplify so many things. Labels allow you to easily put everyone into some kind of box, which does simplify life. For there's no need to actually get to know each and every person as an individual, created in the image of God, with unique gifts and talents. And let's be real, since that's what we're doing on this island. Labels will always be with us, at least for as long as we live in this fractured, faulty, sin-stained world. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. Feel free to label away, just as long as you understand that any label that you use to describe someone, including yourself, will never come close to defining anyone's true identity. You're so much more than any label. Thus, everyone that you label is also so much more than any label. Don't settle for merely using labels to understand the identity of anyone else, including yourself. Allow your true identity as a sacred child of God to be the definition of who you are, along with seeing other labeled human beings also as sacred children of God. It's foolish to believe that you'll stop using labels on this side of eternity. It's faithful to believe that you'll stop using labels on this side of eternity as the one and only identity marker for yourself as well as for others. The label the world gives to someone who depends on alcohol or drugs or sex or gambling or work or money or power to make it through the day is an addict. Someone with an addictive personality gets labeled by the world as an addict. See how easy that is? Yet, we all know that all addicts aren't the same. But the stasis that the world desires to maintain makes it easy to simply lump everyone together under the one neat and clean label of addict. As a follower of Jesus, you're called to rise above, to overcome these labels. This is part of the work that I'm inviting you to undertake on this island. And you'll do this for your own life as well as for the lives of others. Since everything in your life now flows through the filter of your true identity as a sacred child of God, and since you aren't going to be able to avoid labels on this side of eternity, I want to give you a new way to use labels. I want to give you a new way to see yourself and others. Using the above label of addict, I invite you to see addicts simply as sacred children of God who struggle with addiction. See? Such a minor change, but it makes all the difference in the world. For you're so much more than any label. You're who you are, a sacred child of God with your fractures, your faults, and your sin stains. Thus, the same is true for everyone else. They're sacred children of God with their fractures, their faults, and their sin stains. Get it? Let's practice. As a follower of Jesus, how do you define someone who has been labeled rich? They're a sacred child of God who has been blessed with money. As a follower of Jesus, how do you define someone who is poor? They're a sacred child of God that doesn't have money. As a follower of Jesus, how do you define someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Yes, they're a sacred child of God who struggles with addiction. See how easy that is? Just a simple reshaping of some words and your entire perspective of yourself and others is transformed. You'll know you've arrived when you no longer have to think about all of this. You'll simply see everyone as a sacred child of God who is fractured, faulty, and sin-stained. And no one fracture, fault, or sin stain is better or worse than any other. That's when you'll realize that you no longer see yourself and others simply through the lens of the world's labels. And all of this is vitally important. For in order to be real, you must claim your true identity. You're a sacred child of God, and every aspect of your life flows out of this identity. The struggle in all of this is that the world will continue to label people as gay, straight, a gambler, learning disabled, etc. The world wants to make labels such as these your identity, through which every aspect of your life flows. This is the case because labels make it easier to believe that you're being real without any possibility of transformation, thus maintaining the stasis that the world desires. Labels are the world's way of giving into the created in the image of God human desire to be real, without allowing the risk of anyone truly being real. There's no doubt that your labels are accurate. Your labels do describe an aspect of who you are. They just simply don't come close to truly defining who you are. Your labels are aspects, nuances, or characteristics of your being. But your labels alone don't define your being. If you accept your labels as your identity, you sacrifice the possibility of transformation in your life. But the world doesn't want you to have the possibility of transformation. For transformation means change, and change flies in the face of the world's goal of stasis. The world has no desire for you to be more than who you are today, to be more than your labels. The world desires stasis, a stationary target so that life can be easily managed. After all, it's true that life would be so much easier if everyone's identity was always and only their labels. All addicts would be the same. All atheists would be the same. All Americans would be the same. All boomers would be the same, and so on and so forth. If all of us sacred children of God can learn and grow and be transformed from the inside out, then the power of labels will be destroyed. If the power of labels is destroyed, the world believes that anarchy will follow. And the world desires to maintain stasis, not create anarchy. The world desires to keep us all inaccurately and restrictively separated based on our labels. This island invites you to rage against the machine because the world wants to give you your identity through labels. The world wants you to be an alcoholic and only an alcoholic in the same way that everyone else is an alcoholic. The world wants you to be gay and only gay in the way that everyone else is gay. The world wants you to accept the labels of rich or poor, black or white, male or female, Republican or Democrat in the same way that everyone else is rich or poor, black or white, male or female, Republican or Democrat. The division of power and identity is the way that the world clings to stasis. Don't allow yourself to be a victim of the world's labels. You're so much more than any label. You're a sacred child of God. If you must accept any label, this is the best label that has ever been given. Well, I hope you will accept your assignment, the assignment of embracing, acknowledging, and putting into your life the label of a sacred child of God, and believing and understanding and even practicing that everything in your life flows through that label. The world is going to label us, and let's be honest, we're going to label each other. Let's get good at giving every single person the label of a sacred child of God.
Hey there, it's Maggie. Island Hopping is a production of Journey to Be Ministries and is sponsored by Beneva Christian Church in Sarasota, Florida. You can find Beneva Christian on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and also at the Beneva Christian app. You can also find us as well at the website at benevachristian.com. If you'd like to contact my great friend, Pastor David, just drop him an email at islandhoppingpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can text him by clicking on the link in the show notes.